Hello and welcome to the show. This week we sit down with a friend of mine whom I met at Barrett-Jackson a couple of years ago through a mutual friend, Stuart. And actually Marco and I hit it off really well. And I ended up purchasing his 1984 Mustang SVO, which is a super sweet car. But anyway, we just hit it off, and he was an engineer at Ford from about 2002 into the 2010s, Worked on just a lot of cool projects. And the mind of an OE engineer is just really, really cool. A lot of great stories. So Marco tells us some things about working at Ford, also shares with us just some methodology and philosophy behind how to approach a build. So it's going to be a great episode. Thank you, Marco. Also, thank you to our friends at Kenda Tire. They're still doing great things. They got the AT2 released. Great tire, especially for the winter. It's got a snowflake rating. So if you need a great tire at a good price for your vintage SUV project or the wife's car or van or truck or your daily driver, check them out. They're really cool. And I just got some really good news. I don't know if this is supposed to be shared yet, but a rumor has it that in Q1 of 2021, they will be releasing the Kenda Cleaver RT, one of my favorite tires ever, in a 33-10-5-15. So for all of you with vintage 4x4, that is just the perfect size. We love that size. So check them out, Kenda Tire. Thanks for sponsoring the episode. Also, our friends at FSR Free Spirit Recreation. Great quality rooftop tents and other accessories. One notable thing I'd like you to go check out is the FSR Evolution. It is a hard shell tent, pops straight up. It has like the great ability to be a hard shell, so you get all the benefits. You can put a roof, like a rack on top, and store mountain bikes, surfboards, just lighter objects. Great weather-proof protection when it's closed. It doesn't deteriorate the cover. No zippers. Love that. No metal rods. Love that. But most importantly, you can leave your bedding in it. So I think that's a great new feature. Anyway, check out the FSR Evolution. And if you're thinking about a rooftop tent, which I encourage you to because they are awesome, go check them out. Enjoy the episode. All right, welcome back to the New Legend Podcast. I'm here with a special friend, Marco Garcia. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Today is like a pretty exciting episode because this is the first time we have an actual, like a legit big three engineer.
Thanks for having me. I spent quite a bit of time at Ford.
Yeah. So as you see, tell us about this car that's right behind us.
So, a long story on this car, but I worked on the new Mustang, the codename S550. It's a 2015 and newer.
Okay.
And the guys that I worked with did all the handling, so I did a lot of handling on that program.
Yep. What does that mean, handling?
Ride and handling.
Oh, okay. Got it.
So steering, how the vehicle handles on a road course and how it rides. So everything you feel dynamically. So when I was on that program, the guys that did all the handling for this vehicle, the Boss, were all my coworkers, and my company pool vehicle was a Boss Laguna. So I figured I just had to buy one.
So tell us, let's dig in because there's so many questions I want to ask you, and we'll get into a lot of it. So just really quick other context, how Marco and I met was through a mutual friend, Stuart, who's been on the show before. Yeah. And we spent some time at Barrett-Jackson kind of cruising around and really just hit it off because we both love cars.
Yeah.
And I was just so intrigued by Marco's stories about working at Ford and like dialing in, like handling or just being a part of all these cool cars. And he has a super sweet 84 SVO.
Yes.
That we came together on. And so now that's going to be joining the collection. So thank you very much for that car and entrusting it to me. Super cool car. And we'll talk more about that. So, but let's just because we can. Yeah. Let's geek out a little more on what is unique. So Boss Mustang came out in like 69.
69 was the first year. It was part of the Parnelli Jones, and it was a muscle car wars is Ford and Chevy, and there's some other people involved in the Trans Am series. And in '69 they didn't do very good, and in '70 they came back and they won the championship in 1970
in the Boss.
And
what is was the suspension unique in '69 on the Boss 302?
There was a lot of tweaks done. There were so many tweaks done. I couldn't go through them all, but they were kind of special built
But the
cars.
significant one is the heads, or like the engine's different than like just a regular 302 Mustang.
Correct.
From today.
I believe they were Cleveland heads on a Windsor motor.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but there was a lot of stuff done. I don't geek out in the old stuff as much as I should, but I knew there's a lot of stuff that was changed. I think it was Bud Moore might have been involved aside from Parnelli. There was a lot of big names involved back in the day.
Yep. And then that car ran for a few years. Then it kind of went away for a long time, right?
It was 2 years only. It was only 69 and 70. And the Mustang program, kind of led by Dave Parasak and Ford, had this idea that they wanted to do it again and do like kind of a heritage version of it. So the first Boss came out in 2012.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, 2012. And the target was the M3.
Oh,
so it was 100% M3. They had a few cars. There's a book that you would get when you got a Boss and talks all about the development program. And I worked with all those guys, as I mentioned, the guys that did the tuning on it from a handling perspective and the guys that did the NVH or the noise vibration arches, like the exhaust tuning. I worked with those guys as well. And I got to drive all the early prototypes, and they had some pretty funny names. There was like Kid Rock, and there was White Lightning.
For the prototypes.
The prototypes, they all had code names. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So the one that I drove everywhere when I was out in Arizona was Vader. So Vader was my prototype.
And this was in the 012?
The 2012, yeah.
And is this the same? This is a 2015.
This is a 2013.
Oh, 2013. Okay.
Yes.
So they ran, what was the Boss 302 years?
It was 2012 and 2013 only.
Again, so 2-year run.
And they did exactly kind of as an
cool.
commemoration of the previous ones.
And again, help me understand, like what model of Mustang is this? Like the serial.
The code name is S197.
S197. So I apologize. I know some about Fox bodies, but not much other. So what is special about the Boss package?
So the Boss had a unique engine. It was called the Roadrunner. So a lot of people talk about Coyotes and whatnot.
Oh, okay.
So the Roadrunner is a 5-liter that's balanced and blueprinted, as they would say, like in the old days. Has different intake, had different heads, had a lot of different stuff, and it was made to run well above 7,000 for all day long.
Is this the same engine as the GT350 of this era?
No.
Okay.
No, that era, it was supercharged 5.4.
Okay.
I think it's 5.4 supercharged, whereas this is still a 5-liter. It's just very tuned up 5-liter to run at high RPM for a long time.
So cool.
Yeah, so it has a unique engine that went through its own durability at high RPM. The suspension is different than the base S197. It has adjustable shocks on all 4 corners or dampers. And the funny thing is about the adjustable dampers is they're manually adjustable. And the only time Ford did adjustable manual dampers on a Mustang was when? 1984 SVO.
Oh, sick.
So I basically had both models of adjustable dampers on a Mustang. And it has a lot of other tuning things that were done to it. But the minute you get into a Boss versus a base car, base GT, you can tell there was so much focus on handling. They're a much better balanced car. They turn in better. It's just easier to drive really fast.
So let's get into that just a little bit, because we'll get into your role in the GT project, which is super cool. But because at New Legend, for example, we have an engineering kind of leadership team of 4 or 5 guys who are making tweaks over time, and we're building a couple, like 5 or depending on which level, like we build maybe 5 or 6 of one model a year. And we're just like making that's too loud. On the next one, let's make it quieter. Like we don't. So what kind of effort from a Ford perspective goes into like making this special car? It's not just like putting a decal on it. Like you said, there's a lot of tuning, but what type of like actual effort and attention to detail would go into some of the finer points of a car like this?
Well, for example, you talk about exhaust tuning. So there's one guy dedicated. His name was Sean Carney. He is like the sound of Mustang. Every Mustang sounds the way it is because Sean worked on it.
Wow.
So he was almost like his whole job was to make a Boss sound like a Boss. He was the one that came up with the idea of the quad exhaust. So the Boss 302s of 2012 and 2013, they're the only Mustangs that have quad exhaust. They have pipes that come out the side just before the rear wheels.
Yeah.
So that was his idea. And the tuning, because the engine is different. It's a little different because it's a Roadrunner versus Coyote. So he had to handle all the exhaust tuning, resonators, intake and exhaust resonators. So that's all him. So that's one guy doing all that work.
And is a guy like, so let's just dig into Sean's role. Is that like Ford says you have 30 days to get this right? Or is it like, well, how does that kind of...
It's several months. So I would say in Sean's case, he probably has between 4 to 8 months.
Wow.
Because he's got to work with suppliers. They've got to build parts. It takes a long time to do stuff. So that's 4 to 8 months. Once he starts getting parts in hands, he can start changing it. The Dynamics team had the bigger lion's share of the work because this had to beat an M3. So that team was quite larger. I think it was around 6 people, and they had months and months. And they started with early prototypes, and they were just throwing parts onto like a 5-liter Mustang without the engine.
Right.
So it was I think Kid Rock was just a base 5-liter engine, and then White Lightning was all the Ford racing parts on it to get more horsepower.
Yep.
So they were basically working what they could within the confines of what they had at the time to just get to handle as best as they could.
That's so cool, man. Is that like, okay, so let's keep going. So that's now we're up to what, 7 people?
Yeah.
Just specifically, and is it like like back in the day, it was like the SVO was a division or department within Ford?
So it was a unique effort. It was kind of a skunkworks project because there was a bit of tension between SVT and base program. So Dave Parasak ran the base program Mustang, so V6 at that time and V8. And through his organization came the idea of let's beat SVT at their own game. So it was kind of a skunkworks project.
And SVT is internal Ford,
right? But they're kind of their own complete department because they're a separate building. They have their own engineers. They don't cross pollinate.
And it was SVT. They're still around.
Yes, now they're called Ford Performance.
Performance. Yes. But during this run in 12 and 13, was it still SVT or was it Ford?
Yes, I think it was.
Is there an SVT Mustang?
The Shelby GT500 is all done by the SVT team.
Okay.
Now the GT350, GT500, those are all from Ford Performance.
So that is their take, that unique group of individuals on the Mustang.
Yes.
This one is for like the other divisions take,
like the regular guys.
Yeah.
This is like the blue collar guys said, let's go beat, the guys who think they're hot stuff.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a skunkworks project. So they had really low head count, not many people. And then kind of true to it was in the 70s, there wasn't many body changes to it. So it was
I like that.
A decal package, and that's about it. I mean, there was things off the shelf, like the wing from the California Special and the Lagunas, but there was not a unique hood scoop. There was not any of that stuff.
Just all performance.
All performance, all the handling and engine,
Are the wheels unique?
The wheels are unique on Bosses and Lagunas, yes.
Okay.
From base program.
And this is a Boss Laguna.
Correct.
Laguna was a separate model?
It was the higher end. It was the highest end. So a Boss Laguna, it had more aggressive dampers. It had more aggressive sway bar. It had wider rear tires. It had different tires. It had our compound tires. And it also had a rear seat delete, so no rear seat.
Really? So this has no rear seat?
It used to, but I've got two little kids.
Nice, you put it back.
So I put a seat in there, but I've got the rear seat delete still.
Could you get AC and all that kind of good stuff still?
Yes.
And how about like the GT3, like the SVT stuff of this same era? Is that like more? Because I know like my friend had a GT350. I got to drive it. It was a pretty awesome car. Talk about high RPMs, like that flat ground crank or whatever.
Yeah.
That was pretty fun. But it had like no radio.
On a GT350.
Maybe.
Interesting.
I thought so. I thought it had some stuff, kind of creature comforts deleted.
I've been away from Ford for a while, so I thought that was all still there.
Okay.
But maybe there's...
But the Boss has all that, still has the creature comforts.
AC, it has all the normal stuff. I mean, so there was some initiative to try and delete it out, but there was concern that people wouldn't buy it because it would have gone too far. So AC was kept in, and a lot of sound deadeners and all that stuff was kept in.
So you mentioned you had Vader.
Yes.
And you would drive it home and on the track? Like, what is like the scope of like, where does play begin and work end, or is that really blended?
It was kind of blended. So there's a proving ground in Arizona, out in Whitman, Arizona, so northwest of Phoenix, and we'd stay in a hotel. And so I would take the vehicle to the hotel at night, go to restaurants and whatnot, and then drive it to work. And then I would have my own S550 prototypes that I would be driving around. And if you ever get kind of frustrated with whatever's going on, or you just want to brake, I could jump in Vader, which was very loud, and you could go on the steering handling course.
So
just kind of let go of some tension on the steering handling course within reason. And then, at night, just drive it home. But the reason why nobody wanted to drive Vader was it was a full-on car with the like Simpson racing harness that you couldn't see to side.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was a pain to get in and out of, but it was a lot of fun.
And do you have like a notepad? What is like the protocol for Marco going like, hey, I don't like this? And what do you like? What was in your particular role? What were you looking for or feeling or trying to?
Sure. So back at that point, a lot of my role in Arizona was working on the 4-cylinder convertible S550s. Mm-hmm. So if anyone's been in a convertible, there's a phenomenon called header shake, where the front of the vehicle shakes versus the rear, and they kind of get out of tune like a kind of like wet noodle. Mm-hmm. So I was trying to isolate header shake and try and find ways to improve it with mass dampers. So
really quick, sorry to interrupt. What is an S550?
It's the next version of this.
Okay.
So I was working on the 2015 version of the Mustang, which was independent rear suspension. It was Ford's introduction of the 4-cylinder, which there hadn't been a 4-cylinder Mustang.
Turbo?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the EcoBoost 4-cylinder.
Yeah. Which, real quick, like, hold your train of thought if you could. What do you think about those Like, do you like that engine?
I think they're awesome for towing. I've had a great experience with them. I used to work on the Expedition, Navigator, and F-150 EcoBoost. Awesome package for towing. I'm more of a 5-liter guy just because I've always had V8s. So I think they're great for what it is. But if you're not towing, I think a 5-liter is fine for every day. Okay,
back to your story. So what Marco's looking for, header shake.
Yeah. So because prior to that work, I was working at NVH, and I was all full of instrumentation on everything I did with sound and accelerometers and checking vibrations. I was kind of the first person to put accelerometers on the windshield and was actually recording header shake instead of doing a subjective evaluation. So I would do a measurement, and then my mechanics would change like the shocks or bushings or something, or add weight to it somewhere. And we're looking at seeing any change or improvement in header shake. So the issue with S550 was the 4-cylinder was a new powertrain package that has a lot of inherent vibrations because of how a 4-cylinder works, coupled with a loose body style. It's just inherently going to have more header shake. So I'm trying to solve that problem.
Yeah. So what were you looking for when you were driving Vader? Were you actually testing that for the team? It
was just, instead of having a rental car, instead of paying the money for a rental car, Ford has this huge fleet of prototypes. Just drive a prototype.
Okay.
It's low cost.
Yeah. And you can so like on Vader, would you take notes and report back to the team?
Oh, I see the question. No, so Vader was just transportation.
Really?
That's all it was. Yeah.
Really? That's pretty cool.
It was purely transportation.
And access to the testing. You always would have access to the testing ground, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, like to let off steam, I'd go out in Vader. I had a Gotta Have It Green Boss 302 as well. I had a base Mustang. So there's a lot of things out there that you can just kind of jump in and go. Yeah. Stuart was telling me once that both in like a really positive sense and like a shame sense, like that he'd always be super happy. He's like, if you want your car driven by someone who's going to be like in tune with the vehicle, like have Marco drive it, but like be ready for some critique. Because you have to, especially on new cars, like old cars, like
We can't see it in the shop, but you have a new Doom buggy.
Yeah.
I mean, that thing is just like wild and visceral, and like it's hard to tell subtle things in a vehicle like that.
It is.
A lot of new cars, it comes down to like really minute subtleties.
Right. And part of my job, and I had a lot of different jobs during Ford, but I luckily have a background where I was kind of a certified expert level evaluator. I've driven thousands of cars.
Wow.
And people have a hard time grasping that, but sometimes I drive 30 to 40 cars a day, and I'm critiquing them and making reports. So you get really tuned in as to finding these weird noises and vibrations and rattles and understanding how a steering should feel and not feel, and how it should react to road inputs. And you can't turn it off. So it's one of those things that is tough is when I get in people's cars, I just kind of have to bite my tongue.
Because like you're not working at Ford anymore, but like you said, it's hard to turn off.
Yeah.
That's really funny. So you also had the privilege of working on the Ford GT.
Yes.
But we all know like Ford versus Ferrari. A lot of people have seen that movie. Great movie. What did you think of that movie?
It was awesome. I think it was a pretty good rendition of actually what happened back in the 60s. So I think it was a good movie.
And like when you're talking about the BOSS program or like the SVT program, I was envisioning like Carroll Shelby and their like kind of ragtag group of really smart people just hacking on things and making it better and low budget. Like I don't know what. I'm sure budgets are a consideration when you're trying to make a production car. You can't just go sky's the limit.
Right. Yeah. I think it would be a pretty good parallel with what they were trying to do with the Skunk Works program inside the base program. It was kind of neat working with the guys and the stories they had, because I came in right after the BOSS was kind of done and shipped.
Yes. Okay. So the Ford GT was a really amazing car. Started in what year? Tell us a little brief history. I know you're not an expert on the GT, like maybe the history of GT.
The earlier ones. It was all stemmed from this idea, and they go through it in the movie, of Ford wanted to buy Ferrari. So Ford went to go buy Ferrari, and Enzo didn't like the idea that they were going to take over the racing aspect, because that was his heart and soul. So he said, no deal, I'm going to keep Ferrari. And Henry II, Deuce, didn't take that well. And he went out as a vendetta to go and beat a Ferrari at their own turf in 24-hour Le Mans. And that's where the whole program started. They took the biggest engines that they could find, and they took some two-frame cars and just it all started from scratch.
Wow.
So they were trying to do what other countries have done over decades in just a few months.
Yeah, really that tight.
Yeah, it was really tight, and the movie kind of goes through the timing, which is ridiculous.
Right. And from an engineer, your perspective on that means a lot. Like to go, that's ridiculous.
Yes. So when I worked on the GT, it was earlier in my career. This was the 0405 Ford GT.
So real quick, like the BOSS, the GT program gets canceled. Or the car, they only made them the Mark
3 years. I think
years.
The first the early GT, there was. I'm not great with the older cars, but there was a 66, 67, 68, and then there's a Mark IIs that came out.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe 5 years, give or take a couple of years of
and
Ford
then
GTs.
They go away for a long time.
Completely. Yeah.
And Ford makes the Pinto, makes.
Yeah.
I saw a video about like 15 cars that people think are terrible, but they're actually pretty cool. And the Pinto was one of them.
Yeah, Pinto had a good engine. It's a 2.3 engine.
Yeah. Is that the same base engine that's in the SVO?
Yeah, I think so.
Really?
Yeah, it's that family.
That's pretty cool. So GT goes away. Ford decides in 2002 or 3.
So what it was the 100-year anniversary of the company. And they came out, they had this idea of let's do it again. And so they came up with a concept car, and the guy that drew it, Camillo, was a friend of mine. And so,
wow, that's cool.
so Camillo drew it. It got greenlit, and I think we did from clay to production was 18 months, and that's like unheard of.
And you were really a big part of it. Like you were an integral part of that team.
I was on the body team. I had a lot of components that were mine. I I actually built the first 5 prototypes because no one knew where everything went, and I was in charge of all the fasteners.
That's cool.
Aside from my own body, I had like 40 some parts. So it was really intense, and I was a young engineer back then.
So how do you just kind of take us into that world a little bit? Like is there a machine shop? Is there like how do you go, like, especially in the body, like how do you go from clay, but then you like go, we're going to make this like kind of first snapshot of the body, but then you want to make changes. You have a mechanical team that's making real-time changes, or is it actually the engineers playing with some of that stuff too?
So normally you have design engineers. So on the GT, it was contracted out, the design engineering firm, because it had to be so fast.
Yeah.
And the GT was like SVT. It was in one of the SVT buildings. So less bureaucracy, less red tape. You could go a lot faster. One of the best things they had was, I liked, was my manager, if I looked up, I could see him and ask him a question. It wasn't
cool.
Walk down the hall, it wasn't pick up the phone. So decisions were made really fast. So what happens is you take the clay or the design, and you can scan it and get it digitized. And then the designers have to package everything. They have to package the control arms, the engine, put structure. They have to come up with all these designs. And there's tolerances for everything. For example, 2 moving parts, they can't be closer than like 25 millimeters. But if it's 2 parts that are fixed, it's like 19 millimeters. These are all these standards within Fords of how close things can be. So you can't violate these tolerances. Otherwise, there's, repercussions that we know about, that things will rub together and bad things can happen. So you have the design team spend, the CAD guys spend a ton of time doing that. And then like my job was to take the CAD and go to supplier and say, hey, can you make me this part?
Wow.
And because it was low volume, a lot of people didn't want to do it. So we were going to different places. Like the AC was unique, and no one really wanted to make the AC. So we went as a company to Vintage Air.
Really?
And Vintage Air did it because that's what they specialized in, like low volume, low production stuff.
That's awesome.
So it was all this thinking outside the box stuff without the bureaucracy that made us hit the mark of 18 months. So I was like 21, 22 at this time, like super young engineer. And I'm making $1 million decisions every single day.
That's crazy,
and
man.
telling people like, no, it can't be done. And it was really impactful for my career because everyone else around me was a bunch older, and my supervisor just entrusted me with making the right choices.
That's amazing. Must have been a fun time.
It was great. I was on that program for about 10 months.
And probably like working a ton of hours.
It was crazy. Yeah. Sometimes I would sleep in my car. There was just no time to go home. And yeah.
So kind of walk through any fun stories from the GT project.
Well, there was a lot of fun stories, but the biggest one, the one that's kind of most impactful, was there's a test that Ford does called LA City Traffic. So it's staying in traffic, clutch in, clutch out, and the GTs were catching on fire and literally burning to the ground. In
this test?
In this test.
It's not actually done in traffic. It's just a simulation on a test track.
Yeah, so high ambient temperature and just kind of creeping along. So because the engine's in the back, the muffler was near the rear fascia. The rear fascia was made of a certain material, and the heat couldn't get out, so the fascia would catch on fire, and the whole car would just gets consumed really quickly. So the program was getting really close to being canceled because there's just no solution. They were throwing heat shields at it, and they couldn't solve it. But one of my parts back there, my responsibility was grills. So like pill grills or license plate grill or an intake grill. So in the back, there was a grill that was just above the diffuser. And above that was solid rim, reaction injection molded plastic of fascia. And the engineer for the fascia, I talked to him because we sat next to each other, and I said, hey Jerry, why don't you let me cut your fascia? I'll take my grill that's below it and mirror it, 100% mirror it, because luckily when it was designed around the bumper beams, right at the midpoint, so it could mirror it, and it kind of encapsulated the bumper beams. And we ran a test with more airflow, and the rear part of the fascia ended up being really small, only by the license plate, and it passed the test. But now you have this huge grill in the back of the car, And so we kind of saved the day, except we didn't have approval to do any of this stuff.
Yeah, right.
So the funny story is they said, Marco, if you can get Camilo to sign off on this, then we'll do it. So I made up the story and I said, hey, Camilo, come by and check out this car out. I changed some screws on it. And because I had a lot of parts in the back of the car, on the bumper. So I said, hey, Camilo, come check out the bumper and the screws. And he's looking at the bumper and he says, yeah, the screws look fine. He walks around the car and he says, yeah, that's cool. I said, well, Camilo, what do you think about the grill that I added? And he hadn't seen it. So he goes back and he looks at the grill and he goes, that looks really functional. I love it. Everything in this car has to be functional.
Yeah.
So that was it. So he said, yeah, it's approved. That change is approved.
That's awesome, man.
So it was like a bunch of work with suppliers and changing molds and whatnot.
Yeah. In a quick span of time.
Quick time, yeah.
What was that car? What was the body made out of?
It was aluminum.
Cool,
yeah,
man.
yeah. All aluminum extrusions.
That's cool. So when you guys out in the world see what year were those?
It's like 04, 05.
04, 05, 2-year run on that GT?
For some reason, I think it was 3 years, but it was like 04,
2.5,
05.
yeah.
2.5.
So when you see that car, look at the rear exhaust, envision it catching on fire, and Marco saving the day with his grill design. That's pretty awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's got to feel pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. Yeah.
So let's kind of shift gears. Thanks for just that inside baseball, man. I think it's cool. And I'm sure you have 1,000 more stories.
Yeah.
And because what we were talking about a little bit earlier, like when you're doing super low production, like a mishap is fixable. You just fix it on that particular vehicle and hope it doesn't happen on another vehicle.
Right.
But when you're like, how many F-150s? They make like a million a year, something crazy.
Yeah, when you're in the plant, it's like one every 45 seconds comes off the line.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you mentioned it, but you said you watched this car being built on the assembly line.
Yeah, so I was fortunate to have ordered this car, and then they told me when it was going to drop on the assembly line. So I walked with this car for hours and watched every single part get put on it.
That's pretty special.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So yeah, like just the fact that like when you're making one vehicle every 45 seconds coming off the line, and if there's something wrong, like a major, especially a major recall, that can like really hurt the company. I mean,
yeah, well, you don't want to stop the line because if parts don't fit, and which is why so much effort is spent on the prototype phases. So I was involved in the launches of vehicles. So launches is you go through several prototype phases, and every prototype phase, the cars get better and better because you're feeding back the information to the suppliers if it doesn't fit or only fits 20% of the time or whatever, or you go and do durability testing and find out that something breaks. So you're in the prototype phases, there's, let's call it 3 phases, stretched out over 6 to 7 months at a production plant. So at the last one, you're checking how many times are you failing these tests? How many times are you getting a bad squeak and rattle? How many times are you getting water in the car? How many times does something not fit? And at the end, you're supposed to be perfect. And so that when you do go to production, when you're building one every 45 seconds, it's just like robots. You don't really have any downtime.
Is there ever any tension between the bean counters and the engineers of going like, we just got to, it's good enough? Like we're like, meaning the financial people are like, we just got to get this out the door.
There's always a lot of tension on a launch. There's a lot at stake.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's really difficult. So those are where the hours were pretty crazy. I was fortunate enough to, when I launched, I always launched in Mexico. So I could work like 18 hours at a time. And not have to go home to responsibilities like family and a house and whatnot. So I was fortunate that I could dedicate that amount of time to make the cars that I did. And the cars I worked on, I mean, they are launched. They got Motor Trend Car of the Year. They were the best in quality. So they was all
That's pretty exciting. I love that. So let's shift gears a little bit. You mentioned coming home to family. I was thinking when you were talking about walking the line with this car, I envisioned that being a part of the story of this car, and someday when you pass this car on to your kids, they're going to have that story. Like my dad walked the line with this car, man. He's had it since before it was new, like when it was being built. So what do your kids tell me a little bit about like just the place that automobiles have, and your love for automobiles. Like, so I don't know. I'm just looking around. We have, what year's the Bug over there?
74.
74 Bug that you got when you were
14.
14. Tell us a little quick story on that.
Yeah. So the Boss and the Beetle or the Bug are my forever cars.
Okay.
So when I was like 13 and a half, 14, I just learned how to swim. And I bet my dad that I would make it to state championships.
Really?
To states in Texas. And he's like, no way, this kid's not going to make it. So he took the bet saying, if you make it to states, I'll buy you a car.
That's crazy, dude.
Yeah. So I made it to states, and 2 weeks later, he showed up with the car.
And you picked this car?
No, he picked it.
Okay.
Yeah. For some reason, I was going through this phase where I liked Volkswagens.
Yeah.
He must have just looked at the wall in my room and said, I want to get him a Volkswagen.
That's cool. And ever since, that's always a special thing. I wish I had more of that ability, because there's been so many cars I've had that are like super cool. Like I built it, or I did something, had a big impactful role, but then space comes up or something comes up and you just have to sell it, and you sell it, and then you regret it.
Right.
But so kudos to you, man, for hanging on to that. That's a big part of your life.
Right. And that's why, these two are my forever cars. And then, so my kids kind of know if they go in dad's playroom, because my kids are really young, they're 4 and 6. So they call it my playroom. That they don't touch any. The only thing they're not allowed to touch the entire house is the Boss 302.
Okay.
But we go for rides in both. And then, since they obviously see me around cars, they have hundreds of Matchbox cars or Hot Wheels cars. I go to the track. I have a dedicated track car, as I do instructing for NASA, the
cool.
National Auto Sports Association.
What's your track car?
It's a Cobra, 97 Cobra. That's all kind of custom, a lot of custom suspension stuff. So handles really well, surprises people because it's an old car and doesn't look like much, but it's really good on the track.
You had the SVO on the track a little bit, right?
At Mid-Ohio. I had it at Mid-Ohio. It did really well, except in the straights, because it needs more horsepower.
4-cylinder, man.
Yeah, it's doing all it can, but I would catch people on the curves, and they just could not believe the speed I was carrying the curves, and then they would pass me, or they point me on the straights, and I couldn't pass them.
Yeah, until the curves.
Yeah. So my kids have been in the track a lot with me with the Cobra, and they help me change tires.
Really?
Yeah,
they probably freak out, man.
They
think
love
about how much kids, especially young boys, just love. I mean, all my kids, boys and girls, they loved. Like, I used to do this thing in my Scout when we'd be off-roading, and my Scout was not fast, but I'd do this thing called blast off when they were little. I'd be like, okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off, and and they'd like, yeah, do it again. So I can't imagine it, and actually a fast car.
Yeah. Oh, the only problem is these cars are kind of loud, so I don't do it that often, because one of my kids likes the loudness, the other one doesn't.
Yeah, and that's actually good sensitivity, because if you're like, come on, man, just get over it, then you could traumatize them. They never like it.
Yeah.
But what do you see as like, do you have memories like with your family with car? Like, was your dad a car guy?
It's kind of funny because my dad was not a car guy. He didn't even know how to change his own oil, kind of thing. I mean, I'm hard on him, but he did. But
yeah,
he was like an HR background, human resources. We had a '78 Corvette silver anniversary growing up. I think that was kind of impactful for me.
Yeah, so that means he's kind of. I mean, at least he had to go out of his way to buy a cool car.
Yeah,
because that's not necessarily just practical.
Right, and
so that's cool.
And we. His family, they came from humble kind of beginnings in South Texas, both migrant families. So it was a big deal for him to be able to afford a Corvette. So it was big for him. And that Corvette, I'll never forget it, because I came home one day and my parents had sold it. So later on, like a few months later, they sold it to buy the Beetle.
Oh man!
So I was growing up for this whole time thinking the Corvette was going to be mine, but it was my dad's evil plan to swap it out for a Beetle.
Yeah, that's really sweet, man. That he did that for you.
Yeah,
that adds some weight, and that's like something we talk a lot about on the show. Is like cars are pretty special. I don't know why. Maybe you can help me understand why. I haven't figured out exactly why they're so powerful at becoming a context for connection and memory. And, I mean, like, so you and your kids, I think, I don't know if it's the same as like, hey, here's my kitchen knives. I used these when I was in college. You can have them. The kid's like, oh, great. I got some crappy old knives. But cars, I don't know what it is. If it's just like why they're so powerful as a connection.
Well, to me, it's because you mentioned visceral. There's a lot of senses involved with cars. There's G-forces, so there's feel. There's sight, because some of the older cars, they're unique designs. They're not appliances the way they are today. There's sound. Smell is a huge part of it. If you have old greasy smell versus maybe a sweet smell if you're running race fuel. There's almost everything but taste. Maybe taste if you get some like burnt rubber and you're like breathing it in. But I think
that's good.
To me, that's like when I get in my Beetle, because it has a unique smell, I immediately take it back to high school, because I drove that Beetle all through high school.
Wow.
I mean, every single car I get into, the smell is a big part of it. And
isn't that weird?
Well, they say that smell is the scent or the sense closest tied with memory. So if you ever, like, for example, like a little tidbit for those that have significant others, if you take your wife to somewhere special, wear a special cologne. And that way, every time you wear that cologne, she'll remember Hawaii or Tahiti or whatever it is, because it's just how the memory works.
That's cool. That's a good... I've never really thought about like the complexity of senses that happen, and also just like the freedom and fun. Like cars are very unique. Like for example, my friend Tom, he's got a 23-year-old daughter that she's blind. And so for her 23rd birthday, he took her to the Salt Flats and let her drive. And I think they got up to like 120 miles an hour, or maybe more. But you're right, just that like the G-force, the wind, like there's just like a wild freedom and a sense of, like, for example, I just flew here, but I'm driving home, and I didn't like flying, because you're contained in a big pill in the air, which is amazing, feat of technology. But when I'm driving, I go, if I want to pull over, I pull over. If I want to go a little faster, I go a little faster. If I want to swerve right now, I swerve right now. Like, it's just like there's a cool sense of freedom, I think, that comes with driving.
Right. And the most extreme example is anyone who's ever ridden a motorcycle. Yeah. Like, especially some of the older bikes. You can't explain it. Like, if someone who's never ridden a bike and they don't understand why you're addicted to it, you just can't explain it. And it's everything you said, but it's much heightened senses of...
That's good.
It's more wind. It's more of everything.
Maybe less power. A CV550. Yeah. So the dune buggy, that thing's going to be wild, man. Yeah. What's the vision for that?
It's just I only picked it up like a few days ago. So my kids are getting really into camping now. They loved camping.
So fun.
And I did a lot of camping in Mexico and in Ohio. Growing up, I was always outside as a kid, so I want to give that to my kids. And I was looking at side-by-sides, and it's just not me. They're too advanced. They're too big. So I had this crazy idea of looking for a dune buggy, and I found it within a couple days.
That's awesome.
And there's the beginning of the project.
I'm with you, dude. I drove, my friend has a crazy Polaris UTV, like 20 inches of wheel travel, and he had like this 4-foot big berm, like a jump, and it wouldn't get air. It was just like, yeah, like you take that thing off a 2-foot berm and it'll change your life.
It's pretty wild. Yeah.
So fun, good on you, man. And what's awesome, have you gotten the chance to explore Arizona's back roads?
Yes. Yeah.
Dude, it's so much public land.
Yes.
I think it's like almost the #1 state in the country
for be up there.
Public land.
Yes, like it's got to be up there.
It's like over 60 or 70% of all the land is public.
It's one of the great things about Arizona. You can kind of get outside the city, and then if you're on BLM land, just go in and enjoy the land and enjoy nature, which is what we're trying to do.
That's awesome. So will you actually like pack that thing full of some camping gear and just to take it off the camping?
Well, so the idea is I have an enclosed car hauler.
Oh, nice.
So the race car is in there now, but we go camping and we use an enclosed car hauler. So a little austere when we go, because it's just us in a huge box and shelter.
Yeah.
But I have the generator, I have lights, I have a bathroom. I have all the stuff you need for camping.
That's perfect.
But we have shelter in case it gets cold or rainy or whatnot. So the plan is just throw it inside the enclosed car hauler, because it's 20 feet inside of just open space.
That's awesome.
And then once you get somewhere, then you can do recon. So you can go putz around and go to the lake and
it's gonna be
do
so
whatever.
fun.
So it's just to putz around with.
It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
And your kids are lucky, dude, because that thing is really cool.
Yeah, we went drive around the neighborhood the other day when I finally got it fired up, and they had a good time.
Yeah, and it'll be, I mean, who knows if you end up keeping that one, but that's going to be a fun chapter of your kids' lives, for sure. So what's next for the cars, man? You sold the SVO. Actually, you had a really cool story about, you had an F100.
Yes.
That's a rare story. So tell us just really quick snapshot of that story. You bought this F100 and then what happened?
Yeah, so I'll try and make it short as possible. I got onto F100s because my sons, I bought them a 59 F100, and that's their truck, and they've painted it. They've done their own kind of stuff. It's their playground. And so I started looking at F100s for me. I found one in Safford, Arizona, which is kind of outside of Tucson, Northeast, from this lady that was in her family for a while. I rebuilt the engine. I put tires on it. I did a bunch of maintenance work, and it was my weekend truck.
Super sweet, original patina paint, right?
It was a white truck originally per the Marty report, and then it was orange two-tone with this really weird looking camper. It was also two-tone, but it was just really period correct. It was all 70s. The carpet was like shag carpeting in the back, and I took that out. It had like Berber in the front carpeting, the custom upholstery on the door panels and the seats. It was straight out of the 70s.
Yeah, right.
CB radio, all that stuff.
Cool.
So it was my Home Depot truck. So I would go to Home Depot with it and just kind of stay around here where I live here in Arizona in the suburbs. And I put a picture on Facebook on this F100 forum.
Like just to show it off.
Just to kind of show it off, say, hey, this is what I'm working on. Because I've had a few F100s, but that one I was planning on keeping for the longest. And the original family got a hold of me. Some from like Montana, or maybe it was Minnesota, and then someone who was in Tucson. And they said, the story all checked out. They said that was the older gentleman said that was my dad's truck. We sold it in 2002 to a lady in Safford because my father had some health issues. He passed in 2004, and he said, we've been looking for that truck since 2004, which is why we're on this F100 forum.
Oh, cool.
So I got to interact quite a bit with them, and I kind of had the feeling that the truck needs to go back to the family because I had cousins, I had sisters, everybody was trying to get in touch with me saying we want Dad's truck back. So it was very sentimental to them.
Yeah, that's cool.
So they had owned it. The father owned it from 1974 until 2002.
Wow.
And the lady they sold it to was who I bought it from. So I was the fourth owner.
That's a cool story, man.
Oh yeah, fourth owner.
And like really cool. Like I was telling you, like that is so cool on you, because sometimes you get a rad truck like that, and you're like, either A, you would just try to flip it to make money, or you want to hang on to it because it's really cool. But cool on you to sell it back to the family, and really cool story for them. They're like, I was on this forum. We found Dad's truck. I can imagine the excitement.
Well, they've been looking for it for 16 years.
Whoa.
And yeah, since 2004. And like I always tell my kids, do what Captain America would do. Do the right thing. So to me, it was the right thing to do.
Yeah. And it paid forward, dude, in the dune buggy.
Yeah.
She got a sweet dune buggy. Yeah. That'll be fun, man. I'm actually really stoked on that thing. Because it reminds me of like an old Scout. Like the old Scouts are just so visceral. Like they're kind of they're really special, but as like compared to like a modern off-road vehicle, they're really kind of terrible.
Yeah.
They're just kind of Billy Goat and just like not a lot of suspension travel, little 80 horsepower, 4-cylinder, 3-speed.
But they're dependable.
Dependable, yeah.
Very dependable.
If you keep them as is, like we always talk about this, and you can appreciate this as an engineer. Because my take on like, not all vehicles, but those 4-cylinder Scouts and old like Jeeps especially, and probably the dune buggy, they have Dana 27, like really small axles, little 10-spline tiny axle shafts. They have a fairly lighter four-cylinder engine, a T90 transmission, which is the size of a football. It's not strong stuff, but it's all balanced and engineered to work together with the, like the skinny kind of tall, not tall, but they're like 28, 29 inch tall, aggressive kind of old school tires. Yeah. If you leave them like that, then they're pretty tough and reliable. But then you go, well, I really want to put 33s on it. So then you put bigger tires and you go, now I need more power. So you put a cam and a header, now you start messing with everything. And then all of a sudden, forevermore, it has you're just chasing problems.
Yeah. the way I say it, you find out where the next fuse is.
Yes.
Yeah, you're just chasing fuses.
So, like, from an engineer, what's your take on, like, you've obviously modified cars, but what is your philosophy of modification?
It all has to be done within reason, and it has to be done, you have to do the systems approach, like holistic. You have to look, if you're going to upgrade the powertrain, you want to make sure that everything downstream can take that power. And then if you're going to upgrade the powertrain, you want to make sure you can stop the vehicle.
That's right.
And tires is always a big concern of anything you build. So tires is kind of the foundation. And you talk to any race car driver, always say that, like, give me the tire, and I'll build a car from the tire. So that's kind of my philosophy. You've got to look at everything from a systems approach. You can't do an isolation.
Yeah, I like it. So this is actually making me want to dig into this more. So Marco's approach to anything, a Scout, the Dune Buggy, a Mustang, like, so you get this car. What do you do? What do you do first?
So, I'll take the Dune Buggy, most recent example. I know my plan is to go off-roading in Arizona. A lot of rocks.
Yep. So determine your use case.
Yes.
Like, what do you want the vehicle to do?
Exactly.
Go to the mall, go to the track, go off-road. That's good. So you got that down.
Right. So I'm looking at what terrain am I going to be on. It's going to be forest, a lot of rocks, some sand. If I take it to Texas where my folks live, it's going to be a lot of sand. Mm-hmm. So right off the bat, I know I need pizza cutters for the front, like skinny front tires. I need big knobby tires for the rear.
So are those newer tires that you put on there? Okay.
Yeah. So
set up perfect.
That's the first thing I did. The first thing I bought was tires, aside from spark plugs and maintenance stuff. And then it's got to go 4 up because it's 4 of us. So I have to have 4 people. Yep. So after I'm taking it to get tuned because it needs to be tuned by some professionals and have them tune it with the guys that do this day in, day out. So
once VW specialty shop.
Yeah, the only air-cooled guys.
Yeah.
So the air-cooled guys are going to tune it up for me.
Really quick, because that's a very important point. So you determine use case. And then if you're not, you're going to determine what you're going to do yourself, but also like who is going to be your partner for specific things.
Yeah.
And that's because you could just take it to Joe Schmo down the corner and they don't know what they're doing. Like, you know what I mean? So like picking a specialty shop, I think is a very good piece of advice.
Absolutely.
Like looking for those people that have history, excellent, like expertise. They've got a good reputation. That can be a huge deal.
Yeah, and also know your limitations. If you want to spend months learning how to tune a carburetor, that's fine. I mean, that's great. Good on you.
Yeah, right.
But for me, I don't have that kind of time. I'd rather just the experts get it done right, and I'll have it back in a couple days.
Yep.
So it's going to the experts. They're going to tune it, and when it gets back, I'm going to finish the seats and interior, and on the 18th, we're going camping. So okay. I've got a little over a week to get it done.
And what I love about that is, so you didn't go like, I need 14-inch travel suspension, Fox racing shocks. I need all this crazy stuff. You're going to go use it. And I promise you, after you use it, you're going to go, okay, I need better shocks.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I love that.
And some of that comes from my background because I've spent so much time on racetracks with Ford and as a hobby. And there's no way to improve your times better than seat time. Spend time in the car. Don't go build this crazy car like the people that do drift cars. Don't build this crazy drift car and never spend time actually drifting.
Right.
Go get some seat time, understand what your capabilities are, and then start changing your car.
Yeah. That's some of the best advice anyone could give to, especially an aspiring car person. Like, just drive the thing. Because I think so many people, especially today, they see like this stuff on Instagram, or they see like the end product that they really want. So then they just go, and Stuart and I talked a lot about this, like the kind of black hole of like over modding stuff. And then you end up like falling out of love with it because it's like you never got to drive it.
Yeah, I can see that.
You know, so that's great advice. Just go use it, and then keep dreaming. You know, and I don't know if for any car guy, if like enough's enough. Like you're always gonna, unless it's like this and it's a well-built design car, then you just want to keep it as is to preserve it.
It's just whatever your mission statement is, right? So what's your mission? Is it to just like this car, this is going to be a kind of a time capsule, and I'm not going to have any mods to it because I respect what was done and I like this. I have a dedicated track car, which is a different mission statement. That's to make me as fast as possible. So luckily I have 2. I'm not trying to merge it. not to merge them. So I'm fortunate to have two different cars for that kind of purpose.
And that's some good advice too, because you could spend as much in one as you have in two.
Yes.
And it won't be as good as either.
Yes.
At your mission statement. So that's good advice too. So if you want like a rock crawler, because we see this in the off-road world all the time. People go like, I want a super capable rock crawler, but I want it to be my daily driver. It's like, dude, those mission statements are so far apart that you're going to get...
It's a dichotomy, right?
Yeah.
They can't live together.
Right. And I get it. Like, you want to be able to drive it to the trail. Like, I just bought a dual sport motorcycle, and it was the mission statement was very important because that led me to whittle down some of my key things. I had to be under 300 pounds because I want to put it on the back of my Scout or on a little trailer. I don't want to, I need to be able to haul it on a hitch carrier, and those are typically rated 400 on the heavy end, but 300 and below.
Right. Yeah.
Had to have a 6-speed transmission because I had to be able to do short stints on the highway because I want to ride it. I don't want to have to trailer it everywhere I go.
Right.
But you start setting those criteria, even in a Scout or a car. You can, in an off-road project, you might go, okay, I want to do this kind of trail. Like you said, I want to be able to do rock, sand. But do I need 37-inch tires? Like, no, I think I could do 33-inch tires and still get there. And because you can still build a car that can do a lot of things well, if that's the mission statement. Like, hey, I want to drive it like to work, but I want to take it to the track once in a while.
Right.
That's different than like it be as fast as I possibly can.
Right.
What is your take as a factory Ford engineer on the aftermarket?
I think there's some really good players out there, the ones that do their homework, and there's some that are just, buying stuff from China and selling it. So you really have to vet who you're buying from, and do they do their own testing. I've had a chance now that I'm away from Ford. I've worked with some people on some projects that I've had, and there's a company out there that they test, and I've kind of endorsed them, and I push them to other people that I know, saying, "Hey, use their stuff."
Cool.
Versus these kind of bought in China, sold through the Amazon kind of stuff.
So you do think the aftermarket can enhance factory platforms?
Absolutely. Yeah,
okay.
Because there's so many limitations when so the base car of this, they've got to pump out so many of these, add a profit margin that's acceptable to the shareholders or whatnot. So there's limitations as to what you can do with this. On a Mustang or the new Bronco, there's limitations. Yeah. So go the aftermarket, and maybe you have a better shifter, because you don't no longer have to care about noise, vibration, harshness, because the attribute you care about as a driver is, I don't ever want to miss a gear, right? I don't care that it's nice and smooth and soft, doesn't make a clunk. To you can give that up if not missing shifts is more important.
Right.
So the aftermarket can really hone in on the attributes that are important to them that may not be important to a mass-produced vehicle. Does that make sense?
Totally. That's great. Because I was like, we're in the aftermarket business, but like I'm always a little suspect of like, because the theory I have is like, well, Ford, Jeep, like they have like millions and millions of dollars to do, like they have tons of engineer like you to like make sure these parts are going to fit correctly. And it's like, and sometimes aftermarket, you have like just someone with a good idea and he's an entrepreneur, and like, it's what you said about vetting, but you can make a cool video or get pictures, but it's not, then you do the aftermarket part, and then all of a sudden you've sacrificed reliability and serviceability and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's it all comes down to what you said about like mission statement, vetting, really understanding what you want to do, and don't just buy parts on the internet. Watch, read reviews, like dig into like the data. Where is it manufactured? How is it manufactured?
Yeah, maybe call their customer service line. Say, hey, I have this Scout, and whatever vehicle you're building. Say, this is what I'm thinking. What do your take? If they don't answer the phone, if it's someone who's not on that line, if it's just kind of like an Amazon for parts,
right?
Then maybe look elsewhere.
Yeah. So overall, pro aftermarket with some vetting.
Yeah, absolutely. I like my track car has tons of aftermarket parts on it, but it also has stuff I designed myself that I couldn't buy because I knew the attributes that I needed. So absolutely, aftermarket, it's not a bad thing as long as they test their own products. Yeah,
that's cool coming from an engineer. So thanks for sharing, man, all your inside stories. I wish we could do it like longer. I got to start driving home.
Yeah. No, it's been great. I mean, you have tons of stories. I have tons of stories. I mean, I could talk forever. I mean, I have stuff that I've forgotten about that when I, start talking about things in Ford and, things I've driven and like all these ideas come up.
The Fiesta.
I've driven a Fiesta. I've been 3 wheels on a Fiesta many times.
That's awesome. So just we'll wrap up with this. What are some of your favorite Ford products through the years? You thought like this is a rad car.
Well,
and what was when you started in Ford in
02?
02. Okay.
02. Yeah, I mean the Ford GT that I worked on, the 04, 05.
Super special.
That's the top one.
I agree.
So that's special to me. Boss is special. S550 track pack. That's special because I made that survive the racetrack. So there's a huge story about brakes and how it was overheating and transmission.
The S550 is 16 and newer.
15 and newer.
15 and newer. There's a package called the track pack.
Yes, and the target was be better than Boss.
Really?
And there was a huge problem with that program as well that I solved. It was just overheating like crazy, so I solved the overheat problem. So that one's special to me.
Overheating the engine or the brakes?
Brakes, transmission, and axle.
Wow.
So that was a tough one. So that one's special to me.
That is cool.
Yeah. I'm sure.
How about a pedestrian car? Like what is one of the pedestrian cars that just like that thing was pretty cool?
What do you mean, like a grocery getter?
Yeah, like just like a common car.
Oh, I would say the Fusion Sport. So,
Fusion Sport, okay.
Yeah, it was pretty fast. So back in the time, so that was like 20...
Is that like a crossover or is a Fusion the car?
It's a sedan.
Okay.
It's a sedan with a 3.5 liter engine. It was around the 2012 timeframe. With the right tires, that would be a base Mustang.
Say it again, a Fusion
Sport.
Sport, okay.
Fusion ST, maybe it was called. But it was quick. Fusion ST all-wheel drive. I mean, it was quick.
That's exactly what I want to, because now tons of dudes on Facebook Marketplace are going to be like looking for 2012 Fusion.
Fusion, it's got to be a 3.5 liter.
Okay.
Yeah, the bigger engine. It's a Lincoln engine. They put the Lincoln engine in
But it's not an EcoBoost.
No, it was before EcoBoost.
Okay.
So maybe it was like 2011, 2012 Fusion Sport.
That's awesome. Anything else like that was like kind of a little bit... I always like the Taurus SHO, the show.
Those are cool. Yeah.
Like the first gen with a 5-speed.
Oh yeah. Those are cool. I joined Ford late, so to me everything that's memorable is the like 2000s and later. But I've driven one of those.
But that's the hack, man. Like the 2012 Fusion Sport. I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
And they had a Sport all-wheel drive, or the Sport was all-wheel drive.
I think there was an all-wheel drive variant. I don't think they were all all-wheel drive.
That's what I love, man. Is like sometimes cars like that sneak under the radar, and they're actually like a really cool, good car that's fun. But no one knows about them because like who knows about a Fusion Sport all-wheel drive?
Yeah.
All right, cool. On that note, we'll leave you guys with those words and these thoughts. And Marco, thank you very much, man.
Thanks for having me.
So go out. Look at a Ford GT 03 to 05. Check out that back bumper and remember Marco's story about burning cars. All right, see you guys.